Between Hearts, a new novel by VMS, Chapter 1. The Meeting. The library smelled of rain and paper, the scent of stories waiting to be remembered. Mira stood by the tall window, tracing the rim of porcelain cup gone cold. The monsoon light fell softly on a silver hat, the kind that age doesn't dull, but burnishes like wisdom tempered by heartbeat. At 50, she had learned to walk lightly through the world, not with grace, but with a caution. Her laughter now belonged to memory, her solitude to habit. The city around her pulsed with new beginnings, but she lived in gentle repetitions. The same walk, the same jasmine tea, the same shelf of books where words kept her company. That was where, when she saw him. Rajiv, tall, understated, wearing time like a well fitted shirt. He wasn't a stranger, not entirely. She had seen him before, seated two tables away, reading the same author she loved, R.K. Narayan. Their eyes had met briefly once, an acknowledgement between quiet souls, but today something in the air shifted. He smiled not with his lips but with his eyes. He smiled not with his lips but with his eyes, that rare, respectful smile that doesn't ask, only offers. And Meera, startled by her own reaction, smiled back. Do you always read the last page first? He asked, gently noticing her habit. She hesitated, then let out a small laugh, that forgotten sound. Only when I'm afraid the ending will break me. He nodded as though he understood the weight behind her words. Sometimes, he said, it is a breaking that makes the story worth reading. The rain outside whispered approval. Somewhere a page turned quite decisively. In that moment, two strangers, both past and halfway mark of life, found something young within themselves again. Neither called it now, not yet, and it was simply a recognition, beginning of a story that didn't demand to be told, only felt. And the next chapter, conversations over coffee. The monsoon had overstayed its welcome. Every morning, the city woke up, drenched roofs, glistening leaves, heavy with night's rain. But for Mira, the season no longer meant dampness or delay. It meant waiting for Rajiv at the library cafe, where coffee smelled of possibilities. They had settled into a rhythm. Two cups, one conversation, no expectations. No one asked too many questions, no one explained too much. Mira spoke of her childhood, her fondness for Carnatic music, and quiet ache of her children living far away. And Rajiv listened, not out of politeness, but with the stillness of someone who understood how fragile honesty could be. In return, he had told about his years teaching literature at the university, how he had took a volunteer retirement early after his wife's passing, and how silence had since become both his punishment and his peace. I thought I had forgotten how to talk to someone without a reason, he said one evening, stirring his coffee until the sugar dissolved. Mira smiled, and now, he replied, looking up, I remembered how words can breathe again when spoken softly. The cafe around them blurred into a watercolor of sound, spoons clinging, rain tapping around the window, the hum of strangers caught in small talk. For them, time thinned. Sometimes they don't speak at all. They just sat, two lives unfolding side by side like parallel verses in the same poem. Once, when a drop of rain landed on her wrist, Rajiv reached across the table and brushed it away without thinking. It was nothing and yet everything. The simple gesture carried more tenderness than the world's loudest declarations. As they parted that evening, Meera walked home with her umbrella tilted, smiling at nothing in particular. The street lights blurred into halos, and her steps felt lighter. Love, she realized, doesn't always arrive with thunder or fireworks. Sometimes it slips in quietly, disguised as conversation, cloaked in companionship. And for the first time in years, she didn't hurry to read the last page. The return of light, the rains began to fade. Morning light filtered through Mira's curtains like a honey, slow and forgiving. The garden outside, once wild and overgrown, now shimmered with fresh hibiscus blossoms. She had begun tending it again, her fingers reacquainting themselves with the joy of touch. There was a time when she had lived by calendars and work schedules, grocery list, duty hours, but now her days unfolded like a song without rhythm, carried by the breeze of small joys. She found herself humming again while brewing coffee and slipping a bindi on her forehead without thinking and wearing the rust colored sari she hadn't touched in years. It wasn't for anyone, it was for the woman she had once been and had almost forgotten. Rajiv noticed, though he never said it aloud. You look lighter, he said one evening as they walked by the beach. The tide was low and children ran past them with paper boats, their laughter echoing against the waves. Amira smiled, her eyes tracing the horizon. Maybe I finally stopped holding my breath. He turned to her, then keep breathing. Mira, the world is kinder when you do. And their walks become longer. Sometimes they shared stories, sometimes silence. She told him about the poems she used to write about before being became, and it was practical. He encouraged her to begin again, not for publishing, not for applause, but for the healing of her own heart. And so she did. Late at night, when the world slept, Mira wrote not of love or loss, but of rediscovery. Her words bloomed like monsoon lilies, sudden, honest, alive. And in one of her poems, she wrote that the rain left quietly, but the earth remembered, and so did I. And when she read it to Rajiv the next day, he said nothing. He simply reached out and placed his hand over hers, a gesture neither romantic nor restrained, but reverent. In that touch lay everything unsaid, gratitude, respect, and the kind of love that asks for nothing but presence. For the first time in years, Mira felt seen, not as a mother, not as a widow, not as a woman bound by expectation, but being herself. The light had turned, not from the sun outside, but from somewhere within her. And late that evening's a quiet reckoning. Mira found herself wandering into the garden, drawn by the silver glow of the moon. The scent of jasmine mingled with the fresh drizzle, wrapping her senses in quiet serenity. She could feel Rajiv's presence before she saw him, like a pulse in the air, subtle yet undeniable. He was there leaning against the pergola, hands loosely folded, eyes fixed on the stars. When he turned and saw her, a soft smile spread across his face, one that spoke of years of unspoken understanding. She felt her chest tighten, not with fear, but with exquisite ache of longing. Mira, he said gently, his voice low. I didn't want to intrude, but I couldn't stay away. She approached slowly, every step echoing the cautious courage she had been gathering all day. Rajiv, neither could I, she whispered, her voice trembling not with weakness but with the intensity of desire. Restrained for too long, they stood close enough to feel the warmth of each other's presence. Rajiv reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. His fingers lingered at her cheek, a touch feather light, but it sent shivers through her spine. Do you feel this too? He said, almost afraid of the answer, though she already knew. Yes, she breathed, every moment, every thought, even when I tried to deny it. I feel it. He smiled, a mixture of relief and quiet joy, and extended his hand. She took it, and the simple contact ignited a current of connection that words could never capture. They didn't need to speak further. In the silence, their hearts conversed, a symphony of longing, acceptance, and love that had been waiting decades to be expressed. And Rajiv drew her slightly closer, their foreheads touching. I have never known a love like this, he confessed, voice barely above the night air. Not in youth, not in everything else I have lived with you. It is like I have finally come home. Tears pricked at the corners of Mira's eyes. I feel the same, she admitted, all these years, and now it is as if my soul had remembered something it forgot. For a long moment, they simply held each other under the stars, the rain softly tapping around them, the world falling away, and there was no rush, no urgency, just the deep, unshakable understanding that they had found something rare, something pure, and this love at her 50 was exactly what they had been waiting for. As the night deepened, they finally spoke again, softly in whispers only the heart could understand plans, dreams, fears. They shared everything, knowing that the bond between them had now transcended mere infatuation. It was a love tempered by experience, enriched by longing, and ready to bloom fully, unapologetically against each judgment and expectation. When Mira finally returned inside, her heart was light, yet full. She knew the path ahead would not be without challenges, but for the first time in decades, she felt unafraid, for in Raj's presence, she had discovered the courage to honor herself, to embrace her desires, and to finally live for love, not for obligation, not for approval, not for the sheer and un- under undeniable joy of connection. And somewhere in the quiet of the night, as she placed her hand over her heart, she whispered again, "We deserve this, we deserve us." And the echoes between heartbeats. Mira sat by the window of a softly lit living room, streaming cup of tea, warming her hands. The rain outside tapped gently against the glass, a rhythm that matched the quiet storm of emotions in her heart. She thought of Rajiv, his smile, his quiet intensity. He seemed to understand her in her ways no one else had, and it was a connection that defied logic, a bond forged not just by attraction but by an inexplicable recognition of soul. At 50, Mira had lived a life shaped by duty, family, societal expectation. Her children had grown, and yet comfort had never equaled fulfillment. And now, in the shadow of love she had never imagined possible, she felt alive again, as if her heart had found its missing rhythm. The phone rang softly, pulling her from her reverie. It was a message from Rajiv. "I walked past your garden today, couldn't help but think of you." She smiled, a blush rising to her cheeks, despite the age and wisdom she carried. It wasn't just flirtation, it was a shared language of longing, unspoken dialogue that only they could understand. Her mind drifted to the moments they had stolen together, secret walk in the park, quiet dinners where the world seemed to vanish, lingering glances that said more than words ever could, and each encounter had been charged with the electricity of possibility, a reminder that love did not fade with age, it evolved, matured, and deepened. But with this awakening came the weight of judgment, whispers of society, imagine approval of friends and family. She struggled with guilt, with the fear of consequences, and yet the heart is a rebel that bends neither to logic nor expectation. Every time she saw Rajiv, every time their hands brushed, every time their eyes met, the world outside ceased to exist. Mira placed her cup down, letting the warmth seep into her fingers, and closed her eyes. She felt the truth in her bones. Love at 50 was not about youth or innocence, it was about courage, about daring to reclaim a part of herself she had long neglected. And Rajiv had become a mirror of her soul, reflecting back a desire for life, intimacy, and connection that had lain dormant. Tonight, she promised herself she would no longer live in hesitation. She would embrace this love whisper of judgment, be damned, for in quiet between heartbeats, she realized that the greatest betrayal would be to deny her own happiness. And so, as the rain painted the night with the silver streaks, Mira whispered softly into the dark, "I choose us." If you want that morning, the space between us, the morning sun filtered gently through the curtains, painting golden streaks across her bedroom. She woke up with a lingering warmth in her chest, the memory of last night's stolen moments, with Rajiv still vivid like a melody refused to fade. She held the memory close, a secret treasure, while the outside world continued its rhythm of routine and responsibility. Rajiv's message arrived just as she poured her morning tea. I will be near your favorite cafe at noon, just as even if for a little while. Her lips curved into a quiet smile, and even after all this year's anticipation made her heart race. By midday, the cafe was bustling with its casual chatter, but Mira's world narrowed the moment she spotted Rajiv. He stood by the window, newspaper in hand, but eyes scanning for her, a half smile tugging in at his lips. When their eyes met, the air between them seemed charged, a silent acknowledgement of the intimacy they shared. Mira, he said softly as she slid into the booth opposite him. I have thought about last night about us, and I can't imagine pretending this doesn't exist. She reached for his hand across the table, their fingers intertwining. I feel the same, she admitted, the words carrying both honesty and courage. We can't, but I don't want to hide how I feel either. Their conversation was easy, flowing like water around rocks, filled with laughter, shared memories, subtle touches that spoke louder than words. Rajiv traced the rim of her coffee cup with his thumb, a gentle gesture that made her heart flutter. It was in these small moments, the understated tenderness, their love truly breathed. After a while, they walked together along the quiet streets, careful to stay unseen, savoring the freedom that secrecy sometimes allowed. The world outside seemed oblivious to storm of emotion swirling between them. She felt simultaneously empowered and vulnerable. She had not allowed herself this freedom in decades, this feeling of being seen, understood, desired. Do you ever think about what comes next? She asked, her voice barely about a whisper as they passed under a tree, leaves brushing softly against their shoulders. Rajiv took a deep breath, his eyes holding hers with unwavering intensity. I think about living without pretending, about mornings where we wake up knowing we belong to each other. It is not simple, I know, but it is real. Real is worth even every risk. She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes, not of sadness, but of the profound recognition that love at 50 was not about innocence or recklessness. It was about courage, commitment, choosing to embrace a happiness that had long postponed. They lingered there, hand in hand, silence between them, rich with unspoken promises. For the first time, Mira allowed herself to hope not just for the stolen moments, but for the future where they could share a life together fully and without compromise. As the sun dipped lower, casting the city in golden hues, they parted with a lingering embrace, hearts tethered across the space between them. And though the world demanded their attention, they carried the quiet certainty of love's enduring whisper, knowing that tomorrow and every tomorrow after they would find each other again. And the shadows of expectation, the morning light was bright, but Mira felt a heaviness she couldn't shake over the past weeks. Her stolen moments with Rajiv had become lifelines, brief escapes into a world where she felt fully alive, yet the reality outside, the secret existence pressed down on her with relentless weight. Her daughter, always observant, had commented that Mira seemed distracted, and subtle questions about her routine made Mira nervous. Every polite inquiry from the friends about her life, every suggestion about reconnecting with old acquaintances felt like an intrusion into a sanctuary she was only just discovering. She feared the judgment that hovered invisibly around her, a quiet whisper she could not ignore. Rajiv sensed it too. They met that afternoon in a quiet corner of the city park where the bustle of daily life felt distant, almost unreal. His hands found hers immediately, grounding her. You seem worried, he said, voice low, as they walked under the canopy of amber leaves. I'm, Mira admitted, squeezing his hand. It is not about us, it is about everything else. Society, family, world seems to have rules I never cared about until now. Rajiv stopped, turning to her eyes intense. Mira, listen to me. The only judgment judgment that matters is ours. We have spent years following expectations, living by standards that weren't ours. This what we feel it is ours to claim if we have the courage. Her heart fluttered, but doubt lingered. And if it all falls apart, what if we can't live this openly? He tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and smiled gently, though the tension in his own eyes betrayed his concern. Then we live it quietly, but we live it truthfully. I would rather a life of stolen moments with you than a life of pretending. You are worth every risk, Meera. They walked in silence for a few steps, letting the words settle. In that quiet, Meera realized that love at 50 was not about perfection, it was about resilience, about daring to stand against invisible pressures for the sake of something reason. Later, as they parted with a lingering embrace, Meera felt the resolve within her solidify. She would not let fear or judgment dictate the course of her heart. For the first time, she understood that love, true, unshakable love, was its own rebellion, a quiet defiance that demanded courage, patience, and an unwavering belief in one another. That evening, as Meera reflected on the day, she allowed herself a rare smile. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, whispers, and perhaps every disapproval. Even in Rajiv's presence, she had discovered a sanctuary that no societal rule could touch. And in that sanctuary, they would nurture a love that had waited patiently for decades to bloom. The night closed softly with Meera feeling both apprehensive and exhilarated, and tomorrow would bring new hurdles, but for the first time in years, she felt ready to meet them hand in hand with Rajiv, heart in full defiance of expectations. And though the whispers of the walls are there, the office was unusually quiet that morning. Yet Meera felt the weight of unspoken scrutiny pressing on her shoulders. She could not shake the uneasy feeling that someone was watching, judging not her actions directly, but the subtle glow in her demeanor. The spark she had thought long buried. Rajiv's absence only made it worse. He had called earlier to say he was tied up with work, but even the message carried a strange undertone of distance that made her chest tighten. She tried to focus on her own desk, on her own tasks, on the mundane rhythm of emails, phone calls, but her thoughts kept drifting to him. The way his hand lingered on hers, the intensity of his gaze, quiet certainty they had always made her feel safe. By noon, she found herself wandering toward the little cafe where they had met before, almost unconsciously hoping to see him. And there he was sitting alone at their usual corner, the corner of the cafe that had become their private world. But something was different. His shoulders were tense, his hands clenched loosely around his cup, and there was a shadow across his face that made her heart ache. Rajiv, she asked, softly approaching him. He looked up, a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. Meera, he said, voice tight, I didn't expect you so soon. I was worried, she admitted, sliding into the seat opposite him. Is everything all right? He sighed, leaning back in his chair. It is complicated. My daughter called. She has been asking questions, curious questions about my time, about why I have been distant, and I can't lie to her. She deserves honesty, even if it is hard. Meera nodded, understanding immediately. At 50, love wasn't simple or careless. It came wrapped in responsibilities, obligations, in people whose lives intersected with theirs in ways they could never be ignored. I understand, she said softly. I feel it too, the walls around us, the eyes of everyone who would judge. But does that mean we stop? He shook his head, relief softening his features for a moment. No, Mira, it means we find a way, but we have to be careful. Every step we take matters not just for us, but for everyone connected to us. She reached across the table, taking his hand again, feeling that familiar grounding warmth. We always find a way, Rajiv, always. He smiled, a genuine one this time, though still tinged with tension. Then let's promise something, he said. Whatever happens, whatever obstacles come, we face them together. No running, no hiding, no silence between us, not again. Mira's eyes glistened. I promise, she whispered, sealing it with a quiet squeeze of his hand. And in that moment, amid the clatter of cups and murmurs of strangers, their world, same fragile and fiercely their own, stood intact. They could not control the judgment judgments or the challenges, but they could choose how they met them, together with courage, with patience, unwavering conviction that love, even in 50, could still be the fiercest rebellion of all. As they left the cafe hand in hand, Meera felt a surge of clarity. The road ahead was certain, yes, but it was theirs. Every stolen glance, every whispered promise, every heartbeat shared in defiance of expectation was a testament to the life they were determined to carve for themselves. And for the first time in years, she believed, truly believed, that happiness could be theirs if only they refused to surrender it. And the age of discovery, the next chapter, the weekend had arrived, but Meera's heart was anything but at rest. She had spent the morning tidying her work, and it, every noise outside, distant laughter of children, the hums of neighbors, felt like a carried hidden eyes, unseen yet judging. Her secret, fragile as it was, seemed suddenly vulnerable to the world. Rajiv had called earlier with his usual calm assurance, but Meera could not shake a creeping anxiety. The stolen meetings had grown riskier, subtle glances in public, whispered conversations in empty corners. They carried the thrill of rebellion, but also the shadow of exposure. It was during a quiet walk through the neighborhood park that tension crystallized. Meera spotted a familiar figure ahead, her longtime friend Kavita, who had a penchant for observation and a curiosity that sometimes broadened on suspicion. Kavita's gaze lingered a moment too long, her smile slightly too knowing. Meera felt her stomach tighten. Rajiv, she murmured, clutching his arm subtly. He followed her gaze, a protective tension settling in their shoulders. We will be careful, he whispered, his voice steady yet full of warning. Let's keep walking. But as they moved along the winding path, Kavita began to approach, her footsteps deliberate. Meera, Rajiv, she called cheerfully, too loudly. What a surprise! Fancy seeing you two here together. Meera forced a smile, polite smile, her pulse raising. Kavita, what a coincidence. Kavita's eyes sparkled with curiosity. I didn't know you two spent so much time together lately. Must be nice catching up like this. Her tone was innocent, but Meera felt the unspoken scrutiny like a spotlight. Rajiv gently squeezed her hand under the table of her mind, grounding her, yet catching up. He agreed smoothly. It's been a long time since we shared stories. Kavita nodded, clearly unconvinced, and moved on, though her lingering glance felt like a quiet challenge. Once she was gone, Meera exhaled relief, mingling with a fresh wave of anxiety. See, Rajiv, said softly, brushing a stray hair from her face. It's not the world that's dangerous, it's the one who notices. Meera laughed softly, tension melting just enough. Then we must be clever, careful, but cleverness can't dim what I feel for you. He cupped her face gently, their eyes locking. Nothing will, he vowed. Not whispers, not judgment, not the world. We will navigate this together. Every risk, every secret, every heartbeat. Shared, always shared. And as they walked hand in hand, their shadows stretched long under the evening sun, intertwined and unbroken. Encounter had been a reminder of the fragility of secrecy, but alone of the resilience of their love. They were no longer just two hearts in hiding, they were partners in defiance, in courage, and in desire. Meera realized with a profound clarity that love at 50 was not about the absence of obstacles, it was about the will to face them with someone who understood every unspoken word, every stolen glance, longing unfulfilled until now. As they disappeared down the park's winding path, the hearts aligned. She knew that whatever the world whispered, whatever judgment lingered, their love would endure quietly, fiercely, and completely. And the crossing quiet lines. The next chapter, the evening air was thick with anticipation. Meera's hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from the thrill of choice she had long denied herself. Tonight, she and Rajiv had agreed to meet at his home, a quiet, unassuming place that had become their sanctuary. No eyes, no judge, no whispers to intrude, just space for their hearts to speak freely, heart to heart. As she approached, she caught sight of him through the window. He was arranging two chairs near the balcony, a soft glow of lanterns casting gentle shadows across his face. When he saw her, his entire expression softened, a mix of relief, longing, and quiet joy. Mira, he greeted, stepping forward. I'm glad you come, she smiled, her nerves settling in the warmth of his presence. I wouldn't be anywhere else. Inside, the world felt suspended. They moved with a natural intimacy, simple touches, lingering glances, soft exchanges of words that carried weight far beyond their length. For years, they had lived in half shadows, meeting in brief stolen moments. Tonight, they allowed themselves to step fully into the light of their shared connection. Rajiv offered her a cup of tea as she accepted. Their fingers brushed, a small gesture, yet enough to ignite the familiar thrill that had become both comforting and intoxicating. Meera, he said softly, we have lived most of our lives following paths others laid for us. Tonight, I want to start a path of our own, even if it is just this evening, even if it is just between us. Her heart arched, her heart ached at the truth of his words. I want that too, she whispered, more than I have wanted anything in decades. They sat together on the balcony, lanterns flickering like fireflies, the night around them quiet but full of possibilities. Rajiv reached out, tucking her hair behind her ear and holding her grace. We have waited too long to pretend, to hide, to fear judgment, even if the world refuses to understand, even if others whisper, this is ours. Mira, every moment of it, she leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his shoulder, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Yes, ours, she echoed, closing her eyes for a brief moment to memorize the feeling. They spoke then not of the world outside, of the future, not of the obstacle, but of themselves, desires long restrained, of hopes quietly nurtured. Each word, glance, and touch became a declaration. They would claim their love fully, courageously, without apology. Later, as they parted under the quiet night sky, Mira felt a shift within her. The path forward was still uncertain, judgments and challenges still looming, but she no longer felt fear. She felt strength, freedom, and almost of all, she felt love, the kind of love that could no longer be measured by years, expectation, or convention. And as Rajiv watched her disappear into the night, he whispered to himself, we will face everything together. And the next chapter, the moment of truth. The morning sun poured through Mira's window, warm and insistent, as if urging her to step beyond hesitation. Today was different, she could feel in the pulse of her heartbeat, in the quiet determination he had been waiting over weeks of stolen moments and whispered promises. Rajiv's call had come early, asking her to meet him not in secret corners or cafes, but openly at the park where their love had first found a space to breathe. There was a gravity in his voice that made her chest tighten, a seriousness mingled with hope. When she arrived, he was already there, waiting beneath the old oak tree that had discovered together. His expression softened at the sight of her, but there was an undeniable tension in his eyes. Mira, he said, voice low, we can't live like this forever, hiding, fearing judgment. Today we take the first step, not recklessly, not without thought, but openly together. She nodded, swallowing the nervous flutter in a thought. I'm ready, she whispered. For a long moment, they simply stood there, hands intertwined, hearts in quiet unison. The world around them seemed oblivious. The joggers, the children playing, the distant hum of the city. But for Meera and Rajiv, nothing else mattered. Whatever comes, Rajiv continued. We face it together, no retreat, no regrets. Meera felt a rush of emotion, fear, yes, but stronger than exhilaration. She had spent decades obeying rules, suppressing desires, and letting life pass by cautiously. But today she would claim her own happiness. They walked slowly, deliberately through the park, feeling the eyes of a few passerby, but choosing to ignore them. Every glance they shared, every brush of fingers was a quiet act of rebellion. It was their declaration that love, even at 50, could be bold, unapologetic, and transformative. At a quiet bench overlooking the pond, Rajiv stopped and turned to face her fully. Mira, I don't want to wait another day. I want us to live our lives, to share our hearts fully without fear. Will you? Will you be with me, not in whispers or shadows, but in truth? The tears glistened in her eyes, but her smile was radiant, unwavering. Yes, Rajiv, yes to us, yes to every moment, yes, every heartbeat we have been denied until now, yes to our love. He pulled her close, whispers, and in that embrace, the world seemed to disappear entirely. There were no whispers of judgment, no obligations, no past regrets, only the fierce, undeniable presence of two hearts choosing each other fully and deliberately. And for the first time in decades, Meera felt completely alive. She realized that love at 50 wasn't a timid affair, it was courageous, deep, and transformative. It demanded honesty, bravery, and willingness to risk everything for something rare and beautiful. As they stood together beneath the oak, sunlight catching the edges of their entwined hands, they both knew that life ahead would still hold challenges, but for the first time they faced it not as two individuals bound by circumstance, but as partners in defiance and devotion. And in that decisive, tender moment, they whispered to each other not in fear but in certainty, "This is ours, always ours." And a life reclaimed. The morning light spilled warmly over Smira's garden, painting every flower, every leaf in brilliant clarity. She stood by the pergola, a cup of tea in her hand, and for the first time in decades felt fully at peace. Life had shifted subtly yet profoundly. The whispers of judgment, the fears of exposure, weight of expectation, they were no longer shackles. Rajiv appeared is with his familiar smile lighting up the space between them. No hurried glances, no stolen moments, just the quiet certainty of togetherness. He crossed the garden, hand extended, and Meera took it without hesitation. "Good morning," he said softly, his eyes holding the depth of all they had shared. "Good morning," she replied, her smile radiant. "It feels right, doesn't it? All of this," he nodded. "It does, and we have earned it. Every risk, every whisper, every heartbeat we have stolen, it has led us here." They walked slowly through the garden, hand in hand, savoring the simple joy of presence. Their life together was not marked by grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was in the quiet morning, the shared laughter over small routines, gentle touches that carried more meaning than word ever could. The world around them continued its rhythm, neighbors going about their days, and children playing like moving forward. Meera and Rajiv moved through it with a serenity born of truth. Their love was no longer hidden, no longer timid. It was lived openly, courageously, beautifully. At noon, they sat on the pergola swing, the sunlight warming their shoulders. Meera leaned against Rajiv, a contented sigh escaping her lips. "I never thought I would feel this alive again," she admitted. He kissed the top of her head gently, "And yet here you are, alive, happy, free. That's the gift we have given each other. Love without compromise, love that honors why you are here." The days that followed were not without challenges, of course. Family adjustments, occasional judgmental glances, ongoing balancing act of life. They faced everything together, anchored in the strength of their bond. They discovered a profound truth, the truth that love at 50 was not a fleeting spark, it was a steady flame, enduring, deep, and transformative. As the sun dipped down the horizon, casting golden light across their garden, Meera and Rajiv sat aside, side by side, intertwined, hearts aligned. The world beyond might still whisper, might still question, but it no longer mattered. They have chosen to live for each other fully, unapologetically, and in that choice they had found freedom, joy, and love that was at last limitless. Meera looked at Rajiv, her eyes soft and full of gratitude. Here is to us." She whispered, "To us," he echoed, and together they embraced the life that had reclaimed. One heartbeat, one whispered promise, one shared moment at a time. The garden, the light, the gentle rustle of leaves, they bore witness of their love, a testament to courage, patience, and the enduring power of following one's heart no matter the age. And so Meera and Rajiv lived not in hiding, not in hesitation, but in full glorious embrace of a love that had waited patiently for years to bloom. And the synopsis: Meera and Rajiv, both in their 50s, have spent decades living according to duty, expectations, societal rules, and their lives were orderly, safe, and predictable, but quietly unfulfilled until a chance connection sparks an undeniable bond, a love that defies logic, age, and convention. From stolen glances to whispered conversations, Meera and Rajiv navigate the delicate balance of desire, loyalty, and fear of judgment as their hearts awaken to the possibility of happiness. They confront the obstacles that life throws in their path: family expectations, societal scrutiny, and the heavy weight of decades decades of compromise. Love at 50 is a story of courage, intimacy, and transformation. It explores the quiet rebellion of embracing love late at life, the thrill of secret romance, and the profound beauty of connection that transcends age through patience, honesty, wavering devotion. How they discover love is not just a fleeting spark, it is a steady flame that could illuminate life at any stage. And so they choose to live for each other fully, unapologetically, without hesitation, proving that it is never too late to reclaim joy, passion, and freedom to live and love on one's own terms.